This episode is proudly sponsored by The Helix, a new innovation district located in New Brunswick, New Jersey, the heart of the Northeast Corridor. The Helix provides a critical ecosystem for innovation by offering a range of physical environments, a vibrant community of leading innovators, and a strategic central location on the Northeast Corridor. The Helix will uniquely mix workspaces, classrooms, laboratories, venues, and collaborative environments, creating a dynamic community and setting for innovative minds. Universities, startups, Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, researchers, and many others will all call the Helix home. Thus far, the Helix has assembled a community of innovative private and public organizations, such as Rutgers Health, the New Jersey Innovation Hub, RWJ Barnabas Health, Hackensack Meridian Health, universities from Ireland and Israel, and others. The Helix is where ideas will come to life. To learn more, visit helixnj.com.
The NFL season is finally here, so make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. It gives you the most live NFL games all in one place, exactly what you need to make your Sundays more magical. Sign up today at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Rant, our Picks Pod episode for the Akron game. Going to talk about the Zips. We're going to make our predictions. We're going to play what I'm describing as a fun new game. You guys ready? You guys excited? Little fun new game.
I'm a little nervous.
You're a little nervous? Ooh, like you were the butt of the joke in the last game. You're not the butt of the joke in this game.
I'm just wondering who it's fun for. Is it fun for everyone or is it fun for you?
Oh, that's a great question.
Politi's always got that little, and now you can see it on the camera. It's great because he gets that little, he's got those little, the squinty eyes, and he starts smiling. You know something's up. I know it. I know it.
So excited. I don't have much going on, fellas. This is all I got. So we'll come back to that in a minute. I think we probably need to talk about the Pat Hobbs / gymnastics thing really quick. If you guys do not want to hear about that on game week, understand. Fast forward about 7 minutes, I'm going to say. Let's go into this pretty quick. But there were some developments. People called it a Friday news dump. I don't know if that's exactly what it was, but the governor made some comments regarding the Pat Hobbs gymnastics. I hate lumping them together, but we're going to lump them together. Brian, what exactly happened with our governor, his comments, and the steps that came after that?
Sure. So Governor Murphy became the first person to publicly acknowledge an internal investigation happening at Rutgers on Friday, and his comments at an unrelated event. And he said he knows there was an internal investigation happening at Rutgers that he didn't want to. He didn't say the word encroach, but that's essentially what he's saying. He didn't want to, supersede it or whatever. And then we got another source that told us that investigation was in regards to, at least in part, an inappropriate consensual relationship involving former athletic director Pat Hobbs, which clearly kind of goes against the prevailing narrative they had when he did resign, that it was in regards to health issues. I guess it could be in regards to health issues still, but obviously an inappropriate consensual relationship throws a wrench into that. And then, a day later, after the governor, the highest public official in the state, acknowledges the internal investigation, President Holloway tells the Board of Governors and Trustees that they're opening an external investigation into the culture of the gymnastics program, mentioning some disturbing reports in the media, that being us, and just kind of two separate things, right? I think the external investigation was called for on Saturday, and there was already an internal investigation ongoing, which we believe was occurring before Pat Hobbs ultimately resigned. So a couple of action there, and I guess we'll wait to see what the results are of these investigations. But clearly, there's been some movement at Old Queens in the past week.
Right, lots to unpack there. The things that kind of come to mind for me that are it had to take the governor sort of calling it disgusting or disturbing. Disturbing was the word he used. Don't want to misquote the governor.
He did say the word disgusting
for Jonathan. He did use the word disgusting as well. Okay, for the governor, for them to, maybe we should look into this. An external, maybe we should give this a harder look from the governor. The other thing, and I think I got some emails like, well, if it's a consensual relationship, why do you care?
two things about that. One, I don't care. but two, why Rutgers should care is because obviously, and I heard this from so many different people, fans of Rutgers, alumni, people, boosters, community, who are in the real world. And if you're in that position, if you're the CEO of a company, which is exactly what Hobbs is, and you're having an inappropriate relationship with a underling, there's opens up to all sorts of litigation issues. I mean, this is the reason why these HR rules exists. It's reckless. It is just a bad look. I was thinking about this, Pat, and when you're a Rutgers assistant coach, say you're an assistant coach in an Olympic sports team, like you sign up, you're representing the university, right? When you get a DUI, it's not Joe Schmo from Middlesex College who gets the DUI. It's Rutgers assistant coach Joe Schmo, right? Like you understand this is part of
a public figure. You're a public figure.
Right. And you represent the university at the highest level. And for your boss to do this, for your boss to do something that, at a pivotal time in Rutgers history, and he takes this job with the idea that you're going to restore some faith and credibility to this post. It's rough.
It's exactly what you said is a great way to put it. There are reasons why these policies are put in place. There are reasons why these handbooks exist and rules and workplace environment. Like these all happen in every single company. And I think that was a great way to sum it up, because that's the best way to look at it. Like Rutgers is a company here, and the CEO essentially is not following the rules. That's just the easiest way to explain it all. And I think you hit the nail on the head there.
The other part of this, Brian, and what also, anger is not the right word, but kind of amazed me, is like there was for lack of a better way of putting it, like a Sean Spicer vibe to the Rutgers PR approach to this, which I just don't like. They've made a statement. Okay, we're going to go. I get it. Hobbs resigned. Here's the reason he gave to resign. When there was pushback against this, I mean, the statement they sent us, I'm going to read it. Because honestly, this is Sean Spicer telling you that the inauguration is the biggest crowd of all time. Like we were asking legitimate questions. Everyone heard his reason for resigning, and they went, I don't know about that. And this is Pat Hobbs made a very difficult personal decision to resign at the peak of his career and at the cusp of continued breakthroughs for Rutgers athletics. Pat Hobbs put the Scarlet Knights on a trajectory to greatness. And we know that his decision could not have been easy. This is a statement made by people who knew what happened. Like, I don't know.
At the very least, what they were looking into, what could potentially have happened. I don't want to, much like Governor Murphy, I don't want to supersede the investigation. But clearly, if they're conducting the investigation where there's smoke, there's fire, I just want to make sure that we don't end up in the litigations here by just assuming. Anyway, yes, they're trying to pull wool over our eyes, which that's what these people were paid to do. But it seems like it's a miscalculation because now the governor is involved and there are a lot of eyeballs on this. And it's just not something, if they were trying to sweep something under the rug, this certainly is not something that I don't think you can, right? So I agree. I think as many people have noted, and many people have said to us, all of us, a CEO, a person of high position does not suddenly resign from their position at 2 p.m. on a Friday in the middle of the summer, citing health issues, when they could stay and take a leave of absence to take advantage of the company's health insurance or to see if their health can, become better in the coming months. I believe this was a very difficult decision for Pat Hobbs, and I don't think it's a decision he wanted to make, but ultimately it was a decision that he had to under the circumstances, from my reading of the situation.
Right. And what has happened was exactly what sort of predicted from the beginning, was it was going to be this slow drip of info, like one story at a time, that was going to continue, as opposed to ripping off the Band-Aid and going, okay, this is it. This is what happened. Now we have the governor weighing in. Now we have the investigation. Now we're going to have to wait for the results of the investigation. I also do think there's more here from the Hobbs perspective. I don't know if we'll ever hear the whole story. I think there's more here about that. We still haven't gotten to the point where Rutgers has hired an outside firm to look into to find the next Pat Hobbs, next athletic director. That's going to have to happen. But yeah, so just a lot of development on it. Anything else I'm missing before we move on to football? All right, moving back to football. I I think one of the big things, and I want to talk about this, I put it high before we get to Akron, was it was nice not to have a game this weekend because I watched a lot of games. And you saw, you could see just about everyone on the Rutgers schedule in action. And you learned a lot. Like I learned a lot about the schedule. I learned, number one, that Virginia Tech's not going to be favored by 10.5 points. The Scarlet Knights go to Blacksburg. That's the first thing I learned. Losing to Vanderbilt. We could see Brian react in real time to my little nudges. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to be clear that in that scenario where I said Virginia Tech would be favored by 10.5, there are multiple things that had to have occurred.
Yes.
One, both teams would have to be undefeated, and two, it would have to be a night game. Obviously, one of the teams is no longer undefeated, and because of that, I have a hard time seeing this being a night game. So, as I told our longtime loyal listener, Fooch, who loved to come in and bust my balls about this 10.5 nonsense, we'll never know. We'll never know if it was going to be 10.5 or not. So we can just move on. Let's call it a moot point. We'll never know.
Pretty good idea. Wasn't going to be 10.5, but okay. We'll never know. You're right. We will never know.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Okay. But that was a stunning. I don't know if you watched that game, Pat. I watched a lot of it. That was kind of a stunning result. I mean, Vanderbilt obviously looks good, but they're still Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I'm not going to say it totally shocked me because we even went through the Virginia Tech hype and why we should pump the brakes on that. I felt this one coming. I thought all the offseason hype was way over the top for Virginia Tech. Brian broke down the schedule and then still thought they'd be favored by 10.5 points. Yeah, I'm not totally surprised. And what I learned from the schedule this week, just the disparity of the really good teams and the toughness of leagues top to bottom. I think what you're going to see is like Rutgers being out of the Big Ten East is going to be monumental this year. And the opening week kind of just proved that.
Right. Go ahead, Brian.
On Vanderbilt, shout out to Jerry Kill, former Rutgers offensive coordinator, for playing the part in the win. I mean, he moved over there from New Mexico State, brought his quarterback with him, obviously helped out Clark Lee in game planning for this, obviously. And it's always good to have a veteran coach who knows ball. And that's where Jerry Kill kind of thrives, right? In the shadows, working on football, strategy, all that stuff. And clearly it worked to beat Virginia Tech. And Virginia Tech said they were shell-shocked in the first half. Their coach said they probably needed a bit of a humbling after the long offseason of hype. And now my question is, how does this result impact Virginia Tech? Is this going to lead to a landslide where they kind of go down from here? Or is this a galvanizing moment where, reality hits them and they beat Marshall this weekend and come into the Rutgers game in a couple weeks feeling better than they would have if they were 3-0? I guess, again, that's another thing we'll never really know, but I do think there is something here to the psyche to think about of how this loss impacts Virginia Tech.
Yeah, it feels too early in the season for Virginia Tech to fold it up. I guess week one, especially these days where we've learned that with the playoff and everything else, week one results are not as devastating as they once were. So I think they'll bounce back. Again, I just come back to not thinking that they were a great team to begin with, and now I'm pretty certain they're not. Although Jerome's, he's still a pretty good quarterback. Good offense. You would think that it's going to be a tough game. I'm not dismissing that. Just think it's going to be much more of a pick'em than a team that's favored. One game is not going to be a pick'em at Southern Cal. We learned that one, beating LSU, probably the best win for any team. Exciting game, a lot of fun. The quarterback at USC, name escapes me, but I'm sure Brian knows it off the top of his head. Looks really good. It's going to be a tough one. That's right. Yes. Minnesota looked bad, lost. Maryland, the Terps. It looked like they, I get it. The competition at the same level, but still a good win for them. Good win for Nebraska. Are those two teams better than we thought?
I would think. I was impressed with Maryland's results, across the board. The offense did not miss a beat. I looked at that box score. Didn't watch the game, but I looked at that box score and went, "Wow! This system still exists, and they're still playing at a high level." I mean, the stats were outrageous. The quarterback situation seems to be steady, right? Like a product of good coaching and a good system and having good players around the quarterback. So I think I was very impressed with Maryland. Another one you didn't mention was UCLA played Hawaii. I watched a little bit of that game, and UCLA looks like a disaster. So I think as good as USC looked, UCLA looked on the opposite end. Is like Rutgers should be very favored in that game on homecoming.
I thought Dylan Raiola looked really, really good for Nebraska. You never really know how a 5-star freshman's going to look, and he really, really looked the part. I'm not sure I'm ready to, crown him as Patrick Mahomes Jr. as most people are, but I thought he looked really good, really poised, had that arm that everyone's kind of hyping him up for. So I was really impressed with him. I still think Nebraska might be the toughest road trip aside from USC that Rutgers will have this season. Washington didn't have a great first half. Eventually, took down Weber State, and I'm still not convinced with them. I still think that's a great opportunity for Rutgers. And USC, to your point, was awesome. They looked great. I know we keep harping on no Ohio State, no Michigan, no Penn State. USC looks about as good as those three teams have in the last few years. So that'll be a pretty big challenge for Rutgers.
All right. Speaking of Ohio State, looked good against Akron, which of course is the upcoming opponent. Akron did not look good, but I don't know how much of that is. Again, you're playing the Buckeyes, you're collecting your check, you're getting your butt kicked. Did you guys watch that by any chance? I mean, what takeaways do you have from the Zips here coming to town?
I saw bits and pieces. I didn't watch the game start to finish, but I did see, as Greg Schiano kind of pointed out too, that Akron played a little tough for a couple possessions defensively at the beginning. Right. Like I thought the defense was a little better than what ultimately showed on the scoreboard. The 2 QB system was a really interesting wrinkle. The way that before Finley got hurt, right, they were using 2 quarterbacks, Taj Bullock and on the field at the same time. So interesting little wrinkle there. Finley's, of course, he got injured in that game. He's kind of, his availability is up in the air at this point, but I thought it was interesting at the very least, right? You're playing Ohio State, you're going to be overmatched. You got to throw everything in the kitchen sink at them. I thought that was cool.
Yep, I generally agree. I think Pat brought this tweet up to me yesterday from Danny Breslauer, longtime listener and Rutgers fan. He had a great point that every time Rutgers played Ohio State, the next week they were completely banged up. I think the stat he had, they were 1-9 after those games. I haven't looked back at the opponents they've played, but that sounds about right. And I imagine that Akron, their quarterback, looked like he was about to disintegrate after getting just demolished by the Ohio State defense. I imagine that's true across the board for their offense. So they're probably going to be hurting, especially that this is the first game of the season, right? So that's the first time getting real contact, and they're getting just demolished by maybe, the top 10 defense in the country. So I'm sure that'll play a factor, and that'll kind of go to Rutgers' favor, who did not have exactly a physical game against Howard. So they should be in better shape than Akron was just physically.
Right. Listening to Greg Schiano, it seems like he, talking up Akron as usual. I think this game is, of course, once again, more about what Rutgers is going to do than what Akron's going to do. And I'm very curious. There are 2 things I wrote down that I want to see from the Scarlet Knights. Tell me if those are the 2 biggest things you want to see. If there's anything else on the list. Vertical passing and a pass rush. Like if I look back on that Howard game, those are the 2 things that I came away with. Like, can they throw the ball downfield? I think they can. They didn't. I don't care if they complete it. I want to see a couple of throws. I want to see Dymere Miller, just simple outline, go run as fast as you can, throw it as far as you can, just to see what happens. I want to see if that part of the game exists. And I went back and my biggest concern coming out of Howard was the defensive line. I get it, Wesley Bailey, some guys missing there, and I'm sure it was about as vanilla as a defense as Joe Harris-Shemag could have run. I get that as well. They didn't blitz at all. I don't know if they blitzed once. I don't remember a single blitz against Howard. Certainly that's part of the playbook. That's how they're going to have to generate a pass rush. But I want to see that against Akron. You guys agree, or what else you want to see?
Yeah, I think those are 2 good points. That's definitely at the top of the list. The only other thing I would add is, sorry, I had it and I lost it. Go to Brian. I'll have it back when you get it. Or go to Brian. Come back to me.
Brain for it. You're 0-1.
I had a good one.
Okay.
I had a good one.
Okay.
All good. The defensive front got 14 pressures on the quarterback, 1 sack. I totally agree that getting to the quarterback and finishing the play is the biggest thing missing here. I don't remember them blitzing from watching the film review. Yeah. And that's probably by design because Greg Schiano spent a lot of the offseason talking about wanting to get more pressure with the front 4 guys So maybe this was kind of a test run in a game where you really didn't have to create that much pressure. And Greg Schiano had a good point. This was a mobile quarterback who was hard to take down, who probably escaped some pressure with his feet and kind of created plays there. So that maybe when you play more of a statue down the line, like a Will Howard, well, you're not playing Will Howard, but you get my point. When you play more of a statue quarterback later in the season, then we'll probably get a better view. But I agree. I'd like to see 2, 3, 4 sacks. That's been a long time issue for Rutgers. And you'd like to see against the easier teams on the schedule, them get that. The vertical passing game, Greg Schiano said they called a couple plays, the 3 of them against Howard. They just didn't work out, which is fine. I'd like to see an attempt, to your point. They didn't attempt to pass longer than 19 yards against Howard. Again, a team that you'd expect them to have the best chance possible of creating some some separation and some deep balls. They didn't have to, obviously, but you don't, like Greg Schiano says, you don't really know you could do it. It's not really a threat until you do it. So I think you got to put some of that on film, and it'd be good to kind of just get the visual, like you said, of Dymere Miller running down the field, having about a yard of separation from his defender, and scoring a 50-yard touchdown, whatever. I think that would be an encouraging, and that would be the next step for this offense under Ethan Kaliakmanis, who impressed for his ability to complete passes in the short range. Now let's see him try to complete a deep ball. I think he could do it, but we got to see it first.
All right, the light bulb went off. You probably saw it mid-sentence as Brian was speaking. What I was gonna say was I would like to see contain. I thought Rutgers did a horrible job containing the Howard quarterback last week, and what you're going to see this week if Taj Bullock plays, he's a very mobile quarterback. Obviously, Rutgers is familiar with him. He's a St. Peter's prep kid, and can really move and throw on the run as well. So if he ends up being the quarterback, it'll be a good opportunity to show that Rutgers can contain a quarterback, can do a better job containing the quarterback, because there are a lot of guys on the schedule that can move. So I think, and obviously Kyron Jones is front and center on that list. So it'll be a good opportunity for them.
All right. Before we make our picks, let's do some questions from our insiders and from the Twitterverse. A good one. This is great. Margaret, Nurse Meg. Everyone knows Nurse Meg at Rutgers. If you don't know Nurse Meg, you're not really at Rutgers. Her tailgates are legendary. Points out, just listen to the post-game pod. You mentioned the students staying after the horn at halftime. You didn't mention there was no horn during the game except for quarter or touchdowns. It was a beautiful thing. Fellas, we know that we built the Helix. We know that this podcast is responsible for creating something. Is this podcast also responsible for killing the horn? Do we have that? Can we hang that pelt on the wall? The horn is dead? Long live the horn? Did you notice this? I didn't notice it.
I didn't notice. I don't know. I don't remember it. So
I mean, I'm not gonna doubt Nurse Meg here. I mean, good grief. Come on. She knows.
I didn't notice it either. And we looked back at the highlights and I didn't really hear it on the broadcast. A person we spoke with said they're using it less, but they're still using it. So perhaps we just kind of missed it in the,
maybe
the excitement of the game.
Every 3rd and 2, they're not going to use it. They're going to just, save it for real things. I don't know. It's great.
I guess so. And I think what is the reason we didn't notice it is maybe they lowered the volume, because that thing was the loudest thing in the history of mankind every time they did anything last year. So my eardrums are feeling a little lighter after this game. Maybe they just use it a little less often and a lot less loud, which, listen, I'll sign up for that, because that was the bane of our existence, as we talked about every pod last year. This would make our quality of life just skyrocket.
Just something. Wow. Huge developments. All right.
Huge.
If you got horn, please send your horn-related comments. We'll see. I think we need more than one game to determine if the horn is really being phased out or just lowered, or the guy just forgot. It's possible. Someone in there's like, we paid for the horn. We got to use the horn. All right. Offense question from Peter in Palm City. The biggest question I have for the offense is, can Rutgers win a game when Kyle Monungai does not rush for 100 plus? Another way of asking, is Ethan more than the game manager? Obviously, week 1, we do not know. And I don't think we're going to know week 2 either. And I don't think Rutgers ever wants to find out. I think Greg Schiano would love to sign up for 12 100-yard games by Kyle Monungai. That would be the ideal situation. He looked great. And I think we didn't talk enough about how good he looked in this game. If we were checking boxes, people lived up to expectations. He looked like one of the best running backs in the country. Had the numbers as such. had the moment, like those games where Michigan, the guy from Ohio State comes out in the fourth quarter when you think he could have rushed for 400 yards. It was just great. I think that's a good sign. That said, I agree with Peter. We'd like to see if Ethan can win this with the passing as well.
I think we'll find out later in the season, because there were games last year where Kyle Monangai was held to 50 yards or under, and Rutgers offense really, really struggled. So I think there will be instances where Ethan is going to have to prove himself there. But until those moments come, I think Rutgers is perfectly content to continue handing the ball off and letting him do what he has to do, nickel and diming his way down the field. Howard's coach, Larry Scott, essentially called him a game manager and said that he did nothing to wow you, but he'll do nothing to hurt you either. And I think for Rutgers, that is the perfect quarterback, a guy who will not put the ball in danger, won't throw interceptions, will complete a 5-yard pass, and doesn't have to go above and beyond to win the game, because you have maybe the Big Ten's best running back. What impressed me most about Kyle Monangai was last year, a lot of his yards and a lot of his production came out of sheer will and strength and force, where he was breaking tackles and getting these tough yards. Most of his yards against Howard were literally him running up, looking at the pile, turning left, finding a bunch of green grass, and running into the space. And I think it was impressive for him to have that vision and that ability to, create yards on his own before contact. And that's, again, encouraging, where you have a guy in Sam Brown who can be that bruiser back if you need one. And if you can get Kyle Monangai to be both a bruiser and an elusive guy, then you have a guy who was the Big Ten's leading rusher last year taking a next step forward, which is always encouraging. That's what you want out of your best players.
Experience the Heldrich Hotel, a luxury hotel that's perfect for both the business and leisure traveler. Ideally located within minutes of Rutgers University, the Heldrich is convenient to all the action and activities at SHI Stadium, Jersey Mike's Arena, and the Rutgers University campus. The moment you walk through the doors of the Heldrich Hotel and Conference Center, you know you're someplace different. A place with an independent spirit and a boutique vibe. A place where you can immerse yourself in your meeting or event as easily as you can the local culture. Located in the heart of the city, the Heldrich lets you experience all that New Brunswick has to offer. Whether you're coming to New Brunswick for a fun weekend with friends, in town for a Scarlet Knights game, or attending a business meeting, book your accommodations today at theheldrich.com.
I was going to say, it was almost a storybook start to the season, right? The first play was a great completion from Caligmanis, I think, to Ian Strong.
Yep.
And then the second play, Kyle Monangai was a shoestring away from taking it to the house. And you're like, okay, this is going to be a really good offense. And then what happened was they didn't finish 3 drives, and the opposite happened. You're like, oh my God, this offense could be worse than last year. But the point I was going to make was, at halftime, I was thinking of that point. That was my biggest takeaway. What would this game look like without Kyle Monangai, right? He set up that field goal to get to 17-7. He had, 150 yards at the break. I would be very concerned if Kyle Monangai does not run for 100 yards in a game. The problem is, or like in those games that he didn't last year, Michigan, Iowa, Ohio State, or he did against Ohio State. He had a big game against Ohio State. Rutgers really struggled. Until we saw what USC's defense, how good it was against LSU, especially against the run. There's not a defense that you're really like, oh my God, how are they going to move the ball against this team this year? That's a great encouraging sign.
You're going to need him to make throws. I mean, that was, we always go back to Ray Rice, 2006. The few times Ray Rice was stopped, Mike Teal could find a Kenny Britt. You've got to have that ability to make those passes. We'll see if he can. And I think, Brian, we talk about this really quick. You mentioned that advanced stats were very kind to the performance from Ethan. He completed the old-fashioned stats, completed passes to 8 guys, which is a great number.
Yeah, I think along with us wondering if Ethan could complete these deep balls, we have to wonder if the wide receivers can catch them. They had 2 drops. Pat mentioned that first drive stalling. Ian Strong was pretty open and probably could have gone for the touchdown if he caught the ball, but he drops it in the drive stalls. And Dymere Miller, who's supposed to be your number 1 receiver, also has a drop. So you really got to hope that the receivers improve there. And the offensive line did a really good job of protecting him. He faced almost no pressure, obviously didn't get sacked. That'll be harder to do once the opponent isn't Howard. But if they can continue that level of play, the wide receivers can play a little better. And of course, Ethan has the opportunity to throw deep. I think that's they're going to need to do that in some games this year. And there's going to be key moments, a 3rd and long in a tied game or a 1-score game deep in the 4th quarter where you're going to need your quarterback to make that play. I guess we'll see what happens once it happens.
All right, a few more questions. Toughest opponents. Where does Virginia Tech fall on our toughest opponents' games after their bad week 1 loss? Does the game become easier to win? Let's make the list. I think we all agree number 1, USC, toughest opponent. Who's your number 2? Who do you got?
I said Wisconsin in the preseason as a really good one. So I still think it's Wisconsin, Nebraska, and Maryland's moving up the list. So I would start with those 4.
Can you imagine a year where Maryland might be the 4th toughest opponent? What? I'm going to still put Virginia Tech ahead of Maryland, but that's it. Look good. Brian, what do you think?
I agree with Pat. Maybe Nebraska number 2, only because it's a road game in a hostile environment. But I think Wisconsin's the better team. So I think those Wisconsin, Nebraska, Virginia Tech, because it's a road game, and Maryland, because it's a road game, all 4 of those are kind of interchangeable to me. I think we can all agree the easiest opponent left on the schedule after Akron is probably UCLA, who, listen, it's not an easy road trip to Honolulu, but almost losing to Hawaii is not a great start to the season.
Yeah, and not looking good in the process.
Right.
All right, let's dive in. Injuries. Some players were listed out last week, but fully dressed. Sarace at least was in uniform, right? Question mark. Greg Schiano's not going to tell it. We're going to mention this. She's just not going to tell us what the injuries are. But yeah, I mean, I think they put everybody on the list. Any updates at all that we've been able to parse out?
The availability report is a really interesting thing that is now curtailed the ability to get information even further. I just want to say that, because Schiano's whole thing is, I'm just going to let the availability report speak for itself. But then when you ask him after the game about people that were on the availability report, he's just going to say, oh, well, I put it on the availability report. So
it was on the report, Pat. Let me ask about the report. It's great. Yeah, I know.
So I think there's when it comes to injury information, it's going to be almost impossible to learn the truth about this team. So I don't know what else to say from that perspective.
I think
the next step here is we do the NFL model, where every day of practice you have to say, this guy did participate, limited participation, all of that, because otherwise, unless you force the hand, it's not just Greg Schiano, it's most coaches in the sport. Unless you force their hand to tell you what's happening, they would rather chew glass than tell you that their third string defensive tackle tweaked his ankle and might be out for 2 days. It's just they just don't want to do it. And I agree with Pat with the frustration. And again, with the availability report, they could say they're not available for this game, they're questionable, or they're out, whatever. But that tells nothing about, is this a month-long injury? Is this a 2-week injury? Is this, Greg Schiano will tell you if it's a season-ending injury. But what if it's a long-term injury that may be season-ending, but you don't know is season-ending? You're kind of in that, kind of like the Tyler Needham situation last year, where we got no clarity until the end of the year. You're right. Like, I think what anyone could really do is what Greg Schiano says. He'll defer to the availability report. So wait for 2 hours before kickoff for your weekly update on the health of the Rutgers football team.
There you go.
It's not good to hear that from insiders, but that's the way, the unfortunate reality. We will add this. Yeah. It seems like from an injury perspective, I have pretty good confidence that Rutgers would be pretty close to full strength coming off of a bye heading to Virginia Tech. I feel very confident in saying that.
Yeah. Even if we did know and tell you, Shannon would Hobbs us. He would disappear us faster than, it's good. Can I use it as a verb? I like it. We'd be Hobbsed. Never see us again. Someone, I can't say who, but one of the loyal Rutgers people had a great line about how Hobbs could have been like remembered in a great way. Instead, he'll be erased Soviet style from Rutgers history. It's like, wow, that was good stuff. All right, here's a good question along those lines. Someone wants to know, AD, would you hire Greg Brown or a good FCS level AD? Which one would you pick?
Greg Brown.
Go
Absolutely.
with Greg Brown.
I'm going with Greg Brown because I think you'd have someone in Ryan Pistari who would be a better hire than FCS random hire.
I agree with Pat. I think you'd be better off hiring.
Does Villanova count as an FCF hire?
No.
I mean, Northwestern just hired Villanova's AD. They're an FCS football team.
Sure. Good counter.
That guy does have football experience, though, in the NFL, and he was the AD for one of the more successful programs in basketball in the country. I think at this point, if you're hiring an FCS AD, you might as well hire the Kearney High School AD because it's about the same similarity to FBS football than it is anything else. I Greg Brown has no administrative experience in athletics, but I think if he hires the right lieutenants, he'd have a better idea. Obviously, I think the answer is neither of them, and you get an actual sitting FBS AD. But for the purpose of this exercise, I guess I'll go with Greg Brown too. Greg
Brown would be good content. And I'm always thinking about myself first and foremost. There'd be some fascinating stuff there to see when a CEO of a major company gets in there and like the agenda suddenly is the gymnastics program. Interesting. That's all I'll say. Be kind of a shock to the system for Greg Brown. Good question though. I love hypotheticals. We deal in hypotheticals. We're not like coaches. You give us a hypothetical, we're in. Okay, a couple more. I said that before already. Joe wants to know, at the end of Shiano's post-game press conference, he said he had an idea to bring more students into the student section for a noon kickoff. Then he said something to the effect of, never mind, I'll get in trouble if I say it now. Do you have any insight as to what it was? I did hear that. I thought he was making a joke about like liquoring them up. That's what I thought it was, but I don't know. I mean, it could be something else.
I think that was the joke.
Was that just the joke?
Yeah,
Brian?
I think that was the joke.
Maybe he's bringing back the alley. Maybe he's thinking about doing that. I think his popularity rating would just skyrocket to the moon if he brings back the alley.
Brings back the alley after Hobbs gets just
erase the image of him holding up the beer, or Photoshop Greg Schiano's head into that image and turn it from a negative into a positive. I think the next AD at Rutgers, if one of their first moves is to return the alley, they have bought themselves an extra 4 years of support from the student body. No doubt that you'll create a generation of Rutgers fans alone off of the alley, which again died way too soon. Was a great concept, and unfortunately ended up dying. Yeah. I think it died before like a freshman from like Mendham died. Though let's be honest, like it was a good idea, but there was some. They get plenty of fans. They have a nice student section, regardless of the alley. Let's I don't know if they need to liability wise. You could only have so many freshman barbecues outside the stadium to fill it up. I think by week 7, people are going to be like, okay, I've had enough barbecue. I don't have to be here for this game. I think you got to, liven up and have more ideas to bring students into the parking lots, into the games. And I think the alley is going to be like flies to honey, baby. Everyone's coming over to the alley, and then maybe a few of them will stumble into the stadium.
Here's a hypothetical. If you win football games, will people come to the game? Is that a crazy concept?
But it's the chicken and the egg. Wow. It's the chicken and the egg. If people don't come to the football games, will you win them?
I would hope so.
Good transition to the next question. With Virginia Tech not looking great week 1, if Rutgers get the W in Blacksburg, will Washington be an actual sellout, not the Fugazi announced sellout that they usually have? Great question. Yeah, I think close to it. I mean, there's been so many Fugazi sellouts that I've kind of lost of what like my mind's eye, what a real sellout looks like. But I mean, I would say yes. The problem is Washington doesn't bring people themselves. It's the one issue.
I think they will. It's New York City. It's the first trip
New York City,
here.
Yeah, maybe you're right. First trip. Good point.
I think
second trip.
Rutgers had a Fugazi sellout against Iowa on a Friday night in 2022 when, let's admit it, they stunk, right? If you're 3-0 and you feel good about this team on a Friday night against the national runner-up, I think you could fill that place up. And I think I would be, and most people would be disappointed if that place wasn't filled up. Late September, crisp fall weather, a big-time opponent coming in, you're undefeated, national television. If people don't show up for that, what are people going to show up for?
Good point.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
All right, the last question is really a request. We've got the first time anyone has asked for our endorsement. It's election season.
Oh, let's go.
Right. We have to decide. The panel here, there's 3 of us. We each have a vote here. Has to be 2-1. Kevin Fine, friend of the podcast, Rutgers and fan ambassador to Indiana, and a candidate for the Rutgers Hall of Fame would like our support for his candidacy. Wants our endorsement. Like we're like, you would think that might work against you. Be like, be like Antifa endorsing the Republican candidate for president. But I don't know. Here's this. While it may be unconventional, this is what he wrote. Well, it may be unconventional to seek the endorsement of the sports editorial board of NJ Event Media. I would appreciate your support, even if it's not outward facing, as I'm sure you do not want to alienate any of your customers. I don't go. We're good. I'm gonna make my first vote. Absolutely. Kevin Fine has the full full-throated endorsement. As far as I'm concerned, you guys go ahead and vote. Let me know if you want to.
Kevin Fine not only deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, he may be in the Rutgers Rant first. He may be a Rutgers Rant fan, first ballot guy. Absolutely. And this guy brings the best questions every week. I mean, without question, in our Hall of Fame.
That'd be good. Peter Palm City.
There's no
Rocco. We could do our own. We could do our own.
So yes, full support.
Full support. Brian,
I will refrain from endorsing or not endorsing anybody, but what I will say is this: his name may be Kevin Fine, but he is a great Rutgers fan. And if Rutgers had 100,000 Kevin Fines, it'd be better off for it. So
there you go.
I'm a fan of Kevin Fine, and I wish him luck in his endeavor.
Fine's got our support. Well, at least two of us, because Brian's holding back for, I guess,
I'm apolitical.
To the election.
I'm apolitical.
He's apolitical. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Good point. All right. Are you guys ready for our fun new game?
No.
Good. Perfect. All right. If loyal listeners of the podcast know, last year we did the alumni game where we would, for a long story short, because Brian's just exceedingly lack of knowledge of anything before 2013, we did this entire thing where we'd give him a couple of alumni of a school and he would have to tell us who they were, and it was hijinks, and I think 90% of the people liked it, and the 10% who didn't like it really didn't like it. The best way I could describe it, so but we need something new. We're adapting. The Heldrich is our new sponsor. We need to bring the game up. Thought of this idea. I'm calling it Know Your Opponent. I'm going to ask you 3 trivia questions about the week's opponent, multiple choice. At least this week they're multiple choice, to test your knowledge of the team that Rutgers is playing. How do you feel about that?
Okay.
Yeah, you ready? You ready for this? Okay. Here we go. The Akron Zips we're playing this week. Which Hall of Fame coach resigned in Akron after pressure from the faculty? A, Pop Warner. B, John Heisman. C, Rip Engel. Or D, Woody Hayes? Which Hall of Fame coach resigned at Akron after pressure from the faculty? True story. This happened.
I'll go D, Woody Hayes.
Okay. Pat?
I'm going to go with Pop Warner. I think he's a Midwest Ohio guy.
Okay. You're both wrong. B, John Heisman.
Oh, wow.
Was the first coach, was the fitness great? He was the coach at, it was called Butchell College. The Butchell
they had a name change. The name change should invalidate this.
Oh, give me a break.
I knew about Butchell College, but I didn't know it became Akron.
It's just a disaster. When it was Butchell College, faculty pressure over the evil inherent in our athletic system, its tendency to train the few and neglect the many, was the pressure from the faculty, leading to John Heisman to resign, go on to great fame. Where? Can you tell me where? Georgia Tech. Resigned in 1894. There you go. Good stuff, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you're both 0-1.
I love the fact we did Boomer Zoomer last year. If it's 1894, what generation is that?
It's just good point. I don't know. Post-Civil War, the Reconstruction. All right. Here we go. Question number 2. Akron has a famously odd nickname, the Zips. The origin of the Zips nickname is A, the 1913 Akron football team, which shut out its first 8 opponents, which the name was then coined by a local sports writer. B, a brand of rubber galoshes made in Akron called the Zippers, chosen in a campus-wide team naming contest. C, its longtime basketball coach, Ed Zippy Armstrong, who led the team to its first city championship. Or D, nobody is quite sure.
Is it E, a very strong discrimination of Italian Americans in the early 20th century?
That's good, though. It would have been a good. I like it.
That's not good.
I'll go with B.
If you told Politi that before he made this question, it would have been in there.
It would have been the question.
Because I know 2 of those I have thrown out there, and they made their way into the multiple choice. The Zipper Factory, I know I put out there into the general aura of this. So I know that's not right.
All right. Which one is it? What's your answer?
I like A with the zips and the sports writer saying
the Akron football 1913 Akron football team. Brian,
I'll go B, the zipper.
You're going with the rubber galoshes made in Akron called the zippers?
Yes.
Brian, you're correct. It is B, the zipper galoshes. God. Yep, that's absolutely correct. Not only did you thought you made it up, Pat. Not only did you get it wrong, you thought you invented it.
I said
but it's different. You. It's not a zipper. It's not a zipper. They're galoshes in the zippers. I didn't know that.
Oh my
it's good
God.
stuff. All right, finally. People are ready. I can't wait to see the email. People are like, why are you doing this? All right. Question number 3, Brian, you can pull away. I'm going to keep score too. Pat's 0-2. You're 1-1. The Akron mascot, of course, is named Zippy. It is a giant zipper, B, an aardvark, C, a kangaroo, or D, a big dancing zero, affectionately called the Akron donut. What is Zippy, guys?
E, a small Italian man. Okay, I'm done with the Italian jokes. I'll say B, a kangaroo.
No, it's not B. B is the aardvark. C is the kangaroo. Which one?
Okay, I'll go C, the kangaroo.
C, the kangaroo. Okay, Pat.
I'm gonna go with the aardvark. I gotta get one back. It's gotta be the aardvark.
No, it's the kangaroo. Zippy the kangaroo. Why, you might ask? I have no idea. They don't know either. Some guy picked it in 1954. Zippy the kangaroo. Hope Zippy comes. All right, good job, Brian. 2-1, and then Pat. Also, apparently, you're going to be the butt of the joke this time around.
I guess I'm overthinking this. Not
the words I would overthink I would use, but maybe that's one way that could possibly be it. All right,
we're gonna have to switch out who asks the questions because you can't be the question guy every week, Polly. It's not fair.
All right, if you want to come up with some questions, that's fine. I don't mind being the question guy. This is not fair, but okay. If you want to do it, that's fine.
We'll see.
All right. It's a work in progress, the new game. All right. Good job. Akron picks. You ready? What's the line?
I checked this morning. It opened at 26.5, but I checked this morning. It's somewhere between 22.5 and 23.5. I will defer to you guys. Do you want the bigger number or the smaller number?
Bigger.
23.5?
Pat, what do you think? 23.5? Yeah, I think
that's such a weird number.
Yeah, 26.5 seemed like a lot. So I am not surprised it moved down. I was like, 26.5. What? 23.5 still a big number, but all right. Who wants to, I guess, Pat, you want to go last since you got robbed last week. You're 0-1 after the back door, the back door cover. You're having a rough start to the podcast. 0-3 in the game, stupid game. All right. Should I go first? Want me to go first? I'll go first. All right. I still think that's a big number. 23.5 is a lot of points. I do think Rutgers will win. I'm just not, I don't know. I just don't see them blowing out anybody at this stage. I think it'll be a comfortable win. I'm going to go 31-10 over the Akron Zips. Cover.
I think the number is small, and only because Rutgers' offense didn't exactly, catch the eye against Howard. They didn't look that great. I think they're going to want to be a little bit more explosive against Akron. I think Kyle Monunga will have another big game. I think Rutgers defense will show up. And this is a team that won 2 games last year, could be down their starting quarterback depending on Finley's health. Got demolished by Ohio State on the scoreboard and physically. And I just don't think they're very good, frankly. So I think Rutgers will win this game running away. Something like 37-3.
Okay. Fair enough. Pat, chance to gain on one of us, regardless of what happens.
That's the kind of odds that I like picking. Okay. I'm going to say that what happened in week 1, the slow start, does not happen this week. I think Rutgers is going to come out and put the pedal to the metal and kind of reverse everything we saw last week. So I tend to agree with Brian. I think Rutgers is going to cover, and I think you're going to see a little bit more of a dynamic offense, some bigger plays, and I think that the critical mistakes that kind of hindered those first couple of drives I think they're going to wash those away. So I'm going to say Rutgers scores 40 points in this game. I'm going to go 40-10.
40-10. All right. We'll see who's right. As always. Anything else? You put down some rule changes, Brian. You got some.
Yes. Ross Dellinger from Yahoo reported this during this week. And I think the biggest of the changes is that the way currently football is the only sport that allows players to play during the season and still maintain their red shirt. They have up to 4 games. A lot of people have wondered why basketball doesn't do something similarly. Well, according to Dellinger, they're really contemplating that. And it sounds like by next season, they don't have a range quite defined yet, but basketball players could in theory play, let's say you're the 12th guy on the bench. You could play 10 non-conference games against the Wagners of the world and not play in the Big Ten, but still hold on to your red shirt, which I think is a great change and allows these guys to get some experience in college without losing a year of eligibility for no reason. And the other thing I wanted to touch on, Rutgers has a few official visitors lined up for basketball over the next month. This weekend, they're going to welcome Javonte Ware, center from North Carolina. He'll be here for the Akron game, I presume, if he's here over the weekend. In a couple weeks, they're expected to have Angelino Mark, a point guard from California, 3-star kid. It kind of was under the radar as far as Rutgers' interest until last week or 2 weeks ago when he included Rutgers in his top 8. So he'll come at midweek visit. And Kelvin Odie, who's a forward, he's expected to visit at the end of the month for the Washington game that weekend. So that should be a really crazy atmosphere to have a basketball recruit at, which is always beneficial. So Rutgers is still looking for their first commit in the class of 2025. I don't know if any of these 3 guys will become them, but they've missed on a few targets at this point. I think they're hopeful to kind of get the first guy in there. Once you get one commit, it kind of becomes easier to get the second. So we'll see how things go, but 3 official visitors this month should kind of get the wheels moving.
Excellent. We had one more note. A texter insider wanted to know what happened at the end of the Rutgers men's soccer game, whether it resulted in 2 yellow cards for the Rutgers bench and Maitland. I don't know. Do you guys notice this? Or are we going to have to just – okay.
I have no idea. They did get a red card for the second game in a row, and they still somehow won 2-0, being down a man, which is impressive. I don't think it was an altercation of any kind because as the women's soccer team proved last month, if you get into an altercation, people will find it and it will go viral. Gia German, the girl who did that, got suspended for 3 games. That was ultimately 2 games auto suspension and 1 extra game from Rutgers. They decided to self-impose an extra game.
Really?
Yes. And I think that didn't happen for the men's soccer team. I don't know what happened, but I imagine it wasn't a brawl because it's been 2 days and no video has surfaced. So I think
shouldn't have imposed an extra game. You should have had her come out at it with a WWE belt and the third. Give me a break. And I love Mike O'Neill, but that was awesome. So she's not back yet.
No, she gets back, I believe, next week. Okay. But I think if Rutgers didn't self-impose that 3rd game, the Big Ten or the NCAA would have anyway. Okay.
Fair.
That's kind of my sense. So you kind of bite the bullet there and make it 3 games instead of maybe 4 or 5. I don't know what they would have done, but I think that was kind of they didn't do it to punish her. I think they did it because that was the way to get her the least amount of time off for for going UFC against the opponent.
And she hasn't gotten her. I was going to ask. She hasn't gotten her NIL deal with UFC yet. After that, no, nothing yet.
Not that I know of.
I don't. You think you know a world, but no. All right. Anything else? Anybody else playing? Field hockey 5-0 over Vermont. I saw that big game by Puck Winter. Anything else?
Good start to the season there for sure. No, nothing. Nothing
awesome
as
week for the Big Ten football slate is incredible. Michigan, Texas is going to be an absolute doozy. Iowa State's always a great game. Just a really good. I think Michigan State, Maryland, also a big game. Rutgers fans should keep on their calendar as well. Yep. 2 opponents, see how they stack up. So I'll be watching a lot of Big Ten action this week.
Yep, and the opening of the NFL season. Lots to watch on TV this weekend. It's going to be fun. Fellas, we'll be back after the Akron game to talk about it all. Everyone, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.